Hi everyone, I've got Carolyn Tate here, who's the author of The Purpose Project, and I just want to have a little discussion with her about how she applied the 10x rule to her book sales and other things that she's got going on in the United States. I was fortunate enough to spend time with her in Melbourne about 2.5 months ago, and on my stay with her in Melbourne, I introduced her to the 10x rule. And after that, she got the audio book and she started listening to the audio book and applying some of the learnings from the 10x rule book. So we're just going to have a short discussion about what she learned and how she applied that to her launch of her book, which happened coincidentally when I was down there in Melbourne. So hello, Carolyn. How are you?
Hello, Tony. I'm good. Thanks for the invitation to share.
Yeah, so I'm going to just hand the baton over to you and then just tell the viewers and the listeners about how you use the 10x rule to amplify your book sales and what the end result was. And if I can, I'll show a screenshot here of your flipboard with a tally of numbers of the sales of books. So tell me, how it all transpired from our little discussion down there in Melbourne.
So first things first, I wrote the book over the previous 18 months, The Purpose Project, and that was a project in and of itself, and it came off the back of 4 other different books. So each time I do a project, I get better at it. It's kind of like a rinse and repeat process. So I wrote the book, and that was one project. Then my second project was to publish the book, and I used a platform called Ingram Spark, which is a self-publishing platform. And then the third project was to actually launch the book. And I set myself a goal to have 1,000 impacts in the first month of launching the book. And I want to distinguish between impacts and sales. When you launch a new book or any new project, expecting to go full into achieving high sales targets immediately without awareness or engagement or advocacy immediately is actually not really a helpful objective to have. My objective became around making an impact. So, and that meant having the book in the hands of people that I felt could amplify the message of the book and who would become advocates and supporters for the book, which has proven really true. So I just want to say up front that figure is actually not a sales figure. It's the number of books that I got into the hands of the people that I believe matter and can amplify the message, i.e. you, Tony. So of that 1,030, about 400 of them were sales and 600 of them were people that I wanted to get the book. So I set myself a goal, and I also set myself a goal to personalize the book. So what I would do, rather than just try and get people to buy it, I made coffee appointments with people that I wanted to get in front of with the book. So that meant leaders in companies, it was key influencers, it was people that were advocates for this work. And so I had coffees after coffee after coffee, and it was a chance for me to share the concepts of the book, why it was important, what might resonate for them, and to be of service around it. So what actually interestingly happened, so I set that target, and interestingly what happened, I got to about the 31st of July, and I was only at 500, you can see from that sheet, and I thought, oh my God, I've got 1 week to get another 500 impacts. And so I made a decision to put my book up on Kindle and offer it for free for 3 days. And that just boosted the numbers radically. And then I also got a lot of book sales through Amazon and through other platforms as well as a result of that. So my whole sole goal was to have 1,030 impacts and 1,030 books out in the hands of people. For a self-published author, that's pretty good. I mean, a bestseller in the business book world is around 5,000, I think, at the moment. So, and that is achieved usually over a number of years. So, so I set that goal. And then what happened was I had a couple of days off. So I went to, stop me if you want to ask me any questions, Tony.
No,
Is
you
this
want to
okay?
come?
How it go?
Good.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what happened was at the end of that, so that was on a Saturday night, and at 5 o'clock I posted a video and I shared with everybody what I'd achieved. And then I went out dancing because that's my thing, and just blew off all the cobwebs of a massive month of working really hard and launching the book. And I had then 2 days of rest and relaxation. I read a book. I can't not do anything. I'm one of those people that always has to do something. So I read a book. And that was lovely. And then I was actually quite troubled. I was thinking, well, how can I now actually go to the next level and scale the impact? And at the same time, in about that last week after I'd seen you, Tony, I also did listen to the audio 10 times book. And it was a great book. I didn't agree with all the principles in it. I like anything. I think you take what you want and leave what you want. You know, that like if you don't question everything then and accept everything, then it's not really mindful learning, in my opinion. So some of it I didn't agree with, but the concept of 10 times was very, very powerful to me. And after the 2 days of reading and resting, I had I think I had anxiety and confusion about what to do next and what would be my next project. And I'm a practitioner of a book called Time to Think by Nancy Klein, and it's all about the quality of the question and the quality of the answer, and the deed and the action that you take is dependent upon the quality of the question that you ask yourself. And I had a lunch with a friend of mine, Matt, and I said to him, I'm really deeply troubled about what my next project is going to be to get this book out into the world. And he let me speak about what it is my concerns were and everything else with the 10x stuff in the back of my mind. And he helped me pose a question to myself, which was, if you knew you could make a living from writing and selling books, what would be your next big purpose project? Now, the work of Nancy Klein is all about removing the limiting assumptions that we place on ourselves, which actually prevents us from reaching our potential. And I've been labouring under limiting assumption that you can't make money from books. You ask any author who gets money out of publishing a book, it's the publisher. And the author is the one that gets the last dregs, like many artists, actually, musicians and so on. And I had this assumption that you can't make money from books, and that business books are very much used as expensive calling cards, and they're a way to actually get workshops and coaching and consulting and a whole lot of other things, how to make revenue. So I went to bed that night with that question: if you knew you could make a living from writing and selling books, what would be your next big purpose project? And I was still troubled by the question. I didn't think it was expansive enough. So I changed the question: if you knew you could create great prosperity from writing and selling books, what would your next purpose project be? So I went from, making a living to actually creating prosperity. And so I went to bed that night with this question in my head, and I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I had what I felt was the answer. By 6 o'clock, I'd written a plan, and by lunchtime, I'd executed it. And the plan was basically to 10 times my 1,000 impact and make it 100,000 impacts.
Wow.
And,
so scaling up.
Scaling from 1,000 to 100,000. And I knew that to do that, I couldn't just sit at my desk or at my home in Melbourne and just call people and become a traveling saleswoman selling books to people. And I thought the place to get impact and scale really is America, that Australia's a beautiful country to be in, but there is a lot of tall poppy syndrome, and there are things that perhaps this work around purpose is actually more attractive and acceptable in a country like America that we all know is going through incredible change and pain. at the moment. So I made a decision to create the 100,000 the Purpose Project 100,000 Impacts Tour. And so I'm going to be traveling to 10 cities over 10 weeks. So I'm going from Melbourne to Sydney to Toronto, New York, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Boulder, LA, and back to Queensland in time for my sister's birthday in December. And I leave on the 23rd of September, so it's literally, I think, about 10 weeks away. And the minute that I set that actual goal, and my goal is to have 100,000 impacts. I have two goals. One is to sell 100,000 books, and publicly to have 100,000 impacts. And I'm counting an impact as somebody that I have a conversation with, that listens to one of my podcasts, that will be one of your coaching recipients, that will be somebody who's bought the book, someone who comes to one of my deep dinners. One of the things that I'm doing on the tour is I'm hosting deep dinners in every location. So I will be having 3 in Melbourne, 1 in Sydney, 1 in every location. And the deep dinners are a way to create connection and to catalyze the purpose conversation amongst people, rather than the big kind of speak to 1,000 and everyone goes, yeah, that's great, and then does nothing with it. So I've tried to kind of create something a little bit unique around the campaign. And I think that's probably where my marketing history came to the fore in doing this. You know, I was a marketer before I moved into this space, and I realized that I needed to create something that was going to be of interest to people, that people would want to follow, that they would be excited about, they'd want to be a part of. So create a movement, I guess, rather than a sales campaign. And to not be attached to the outcome of whether somebody buys a book or whether they, you know, are actually advocates of the work, whether they care about the work. To me, letting go of whether people are attached to your message. Some people will love my book, others will hate it, some will get it and not even read it. And I think that's part of doing the work that you're meant to be doing on purpose, is that you really don't get attached to the response to your work. Because the minute you get attached to the response to your work is the minute that you're letting other people's views and influence the work that you do. So as a creative and a writer, I'm just committed to doing the work, and I've already got my next book in my head, and I'm doing a lot of research for that book at the moment. So I created this tour. And I might come back with my tail between my legs in December, or I might come back and go, you never know. I mean, Anais Nin, and she's a pretty wild woman, French-American woman, who said this quote, that courage, life shrinks and expands in proportion to one's courage. So
who was that? Who said that?
Anais Nin, Anaisnin is her surname. And so I agree with that. I think that courage and curiosity are essential. I think I couldn't have had the impetus and the excitement and enthusiasm. The other thing I want to point out behind all of that, I'm doing it on a budget, and I've actually decided to let the house that I rent go in Australia, in Melbourne, so that I can eliminate my expenses, minimise my belongings. So I'm downsizing again, minimalising everything, eradicating my Australian expenses so that I can spend what I would have spent living here in another country. So it's not like I'm, you know, doubling my expenses to do this. I'm actually mindful that I'm kind of being, I'm not going to use the word frugal. I'm doing it economically and with mindfulness around what I'm spending, but I also have budgets in place. I have projections, sales projections. I know how many books I need to sell in order to cover the expenses of the tour and the expenses of my campaign manager, Sam, that's working for me. I mean, she's a godsend, having her on board. Oh, without her, I couldn't do this. And I think that's the other real thing, is just, you know, it's great to have the 10 times effect, but it's also essential that you have the support network around you, whether that's paid people or whether that's a coach or whether it's your family or colleagues, work colleagues or whatever. That's just as essential in doing this work, is to know that you've got the support that you need. So that's the project.
Right. So I was going
Have
to
I
ask
answered
you,
your question?
and I got some more questions. Let's go back to when you applied the 10x to achieving those first 1,000 books. As far as time management's concerned, how did you make the shift? What did you do to, because obviously, you know, if you're doing 10 times more than what you normally would do, you've got to give up some things and not attend events or coffee meetings or whatever. You've got to allocate your time so that you've got the time to achieve those things. So what did you give up? What did you do to make a shift in your time management? How did you work smarter?
Well, I had a clear plan around how I wanted to spend the time in the first place. So I was having I was having 30-minute coffee meetings instead of 1-hour coffee meetings. So
how many coffees were you having a day?
Up to about 6 or 7 some days.
Wow. No wonder you're charged up.
I'd ask them all, yeah, well, I wasn't always drinking coffee. I still kept my limit. But I'd have people come and meet me at the hub where I work. So, and then I'd back the meetings up with people. The other thing that I did, which was quite powerful, was at my book launch on the 6th of July, there are 100 people there, and I gave everybody 2 copies of the book. And I managed for that event to cover the cost of the book plus the drinks and everything, which was pretty cool. And I asked them to give the second book to somebody that they knew could amplify the why, the purpose, who would appreciate the book, who has the capacity to expand the conversation with purpose within an organization or whatever. So that was actually quite good. That worked really well. It was actually offering people 2 books and making a direct request that they share the second one with somebody of significance who could spread the word of purpose and the book. So I did just some smarter things like that. Look, I was working, 40 to 50 hours a week. I really don't overwork. I think it's the death of, to me, I still did my dance. I still did my other evening activities and went out and did lots of, I didn't compromise my life for this. And, I don't advocate that, and I simply don't. Like, the more joy I have in my life that's not associated with work, then the better I am at my work. It's just saying no to the things that are not in alignment with your purpose and your intention. So I didn't work 60-hour weeks. I'm putting it out there. I just chose to do the, and I wasn't really running workshops or doing any teaching or, I sacrificed revenue in order to actually focus on that objective and those goals that you showed. And with the knowing that that's, the next 100,000 impacts is that I could, by having done that first 1,000, now I'm setting in place some serious sales targets, some objectives with the number of conversations that I'm going to have. Look, I just had this amazing, and taking action. So like I did this amazing podcast with this woman called Brooke McAllery, who runs Slow Your Home, which is a really, really amazing podcast. And that podcast alone had 13,500 listens, and it was the one that came out on the same day as the book launch.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
13,500 listens it had. And I've done a number of podcasts are really good. I love podcasts and interviews like this because they're quite they're good, they're insightful. But I had an email today from somebody in Portland who had listened to that podcast. She works for a big trucking company, who had looked up my website, has contacted me. She's bought a copy of the Purpose Project for her peers at work. their book club in their workplace, and she's inviting me to come and do a deep dinner with her peers in their trucking company in Portland.
Wow. How
Yeah.
cool.
And stuff like that's happening every day. I'm getting emails and things. So for me, it's about doing the work. I don't believe in aggressively high-ass, high-ended sales approaches and endlessly calling people. It's not me. I don't believe in that. I believe that you put your art out into the world and that you make an invitation and that you offer to be of service and that you allow people to accept, reject, adopt, get into your work, and you allow that to happen. I am not an aggressive salesperson. I don't believe in those strategies anymore. I don't think they work. And I'm sorry if that's not the message you want your people to hear. But and that was kind of my problem with 10X. It was great, and it was also like challenging, and it was good because I there's no text I'll ever agree with or adopt as my Bible, you know, like just as I wouldn't expect someone to read the Purpose Project and think, oh my God, this is the holy grail of texts. It's not the holy grail of text. It's got some cool concepts in it. And I would like people to reject and accept what's right for them in it, not treat it as their Bible. And so 10X was great because it gave me the kick up the butt that I needed to think bigger, to actually go, well, 100,000 impacts, don't worry about, you know, 1,000 was a good to start and it was achievable and I did it. But having no goal is actually the worst thing that you could ever have, is to not have a goal. If it's 10, if it's 5, if it's 100,000, whatever. And I talk about in my book about knowing the what and the why and letting go a bit of the how. So knowing what you want to achieve, but more importantly, why. If your why is actually so important. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why, or how do I want to make a difference in the world? What is most meaningful to me? How am I bringing that to life through a purpose project? So what do I want to achieve? Why? But and the what is, what are the numbers? What's the objective of doing this? What's the outcome that I want to achieve? And then being less attached to the how. Like we're all taught in the world to be focused on the action and the how. And the action and the how piece is important, but it can be lethal if you don't know what you're wanting to achieve and why. And for many of us in life, we put the ladder up the wrong wall. We kind of are so focused on scaling the ladder, on how we're going to get up the rung. We see this in the corporate world. We see it in so many, you know, how am I going to get that house, get that car, get that stuff, that brand new 50-inch plasma or whatever. So we're so attached to how we're going to get things. We don't actually question what it is we really want and why we want it. And we find that our ladder's up the wrong wall. We're so focused on scaling the ladder that it's not till we get to the top and we go, I've got this, but I don't even really want it. And our ladder's been up the wrong wall the whole time. So yeah, for me, the knowing what you want to achieve and why you want to achieve it is so important. And then you can apply the 10X rule to it because you've done the work required to know the what and the why. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, you beat me to it because I was going to ask you about that because you may not know this, but for those people that come into the Immersion Effect program, the first book that they get to read, obviously, is your book. The first thing they do is they do the Fingerprints for Success, which is Michelle Duvall's profiler that helps people identify what their motivational factors are and what their genius states are. And then I get them to know who they are. That'll give them a real good insight into who they are. And then the why and why they're doing things for their business or their life, because that's where your book comes into it. So I want them to read your book, and then I want them to put a proposal forward to me outlining their purpose project, their mission, all that stuff that's inside your book. And then the next thing to do is to bring in the 10X rule and apply that to, once they're really, really, really clear on their purpose and their mission and what they want to achieve in the future. And then if they apply the 10X rule to that, then they'll have the desired results that they've got. And that's basically the how. So we've got the why, or sorry, we've got the who, the why, the what, and then finished off with the how. But it was interesting what you said about the how.
Yeah, look, I mean, even if I look at it in a practical example, when I was only at 500 impacts with that goal of 1,000 a week before, I was like, how am I going to get 1,000 impacts? I've got 500 books to get out there in a week, and I just brainstormed all the ideas. And the Kindle thing had been a problem with the publishing platform. It was just taking much longer than I thought. And I made a quite significant decision to call Ingram Spark and say, look, cancel the publication via Ingram Spark onto Amazon Kindle. I'm going to publish it direct on Kindle. So then I had to go to Fiverr and get somebody to reconfigure the Kindle book and then load it up on Amazon and work out the promotional thing, because they allow 3 to 5 days where you can have your book for free. And it came up in the last week, and all I did was I shouted out from all the rooftops that you can get the book on Kindle for free for the next 3 days. And that just upped the numbers. So
do you know how many they pulled in?
Yeah, about 350 or so in 3 days. Yeah. And it could have been more, but it was enough to get me to the 1,000. And I think what happens is you get creative with the how when you know the what and the why, like when you've got your objective and your numbers. And I hate numbers. I'm traditionally not a number-driven person, but through doing that project and thinking about 10X, I've become actually excited by the numbers.
Yeah.
Which is actually, and even calling my tour the 100,000 Impacts Tour, we're now at 29,000 already. So I've got 2 months to get to 100,000.
Well, I was going to ask you that. I was going to say that, initially you started out, and I was only aware that you set that goal for 1,000, and then you came in and blew me away saying that you're taking it to another level of 100,000. I went, shit. I thought, how's she going to achieve that? But you perfectly crafted out a whole plan there that will enable you to achieve that. I believe so. It's possible. It's doable.
Yeah. Well, it's helped when someone like the Slow Your Home podcast has 13,500 listens. So, the Impacts Tour isn't about 100,000 people buying the book, even though that is an objective. My main objective is to have 100,000 impacts. So every time I do an interview like this or
that's an impact.
Conversation, it's an impact. And for me, an impact is somebody that I share the concept of purpose, and it sparks a conversation in somebody to go and read the book or have a conversation, share it. But if I'm having 100,000 impacts, then, and even if 10% of those buy the book, that's how much? I'm shocking, 100,000. That's 10%, 10,000 books. That's enough to cover everything for the next 2 months. I can make enough profit off 10,000 books.
Yeah.
To cover the next 3 to 4 months. And then and as I go through this project, as I go through this over the next 2 months or 3 months till December, I'll be formulating the next project to build on top of that. And
is that $1 million? Is that $1 million?
Maybe.
1 million impacts?
Well, who knows? But my intention to get the 100,000 is I want this book to be sold into companies. I want companies to buy 1,000 or 2,000 or 500. So even though there'll be lots of individual purchases through Amazon and so on. My intention, we've got 3 very specific offers. So what I did was my campaign manager and I, we've come up with a campaign that if people buy 10 plus books, they'll get a digital journal and the cost of the book will be $25. If people buy 100 plus books, the cost of the book will be $20, plus they'll get a consultation with me and the journal. And then if a company buys 1,000 books, it's at $15, which is like, I'll still make $10 off each of those books profit, because I'm self-publishing. If you went with a traditional publisher, you just wouldn't be able to kind of put those numbers in place. And then they get a free keynote speaking gig from me, which I would normally charge $5,000 for. So we've put some very, very clear offers. And so as we're getting emails and requests to do things, we're responding in a way that is sharing with them what it is we're offering, and seeing if there's a match between what the client or potential client is requesting versus what it is I'm offering. And for many of us in business, we can kind of massage ourselves and acquiesce and, okay, yeah, I'll run a workshop, but I'm not going to sell any books, or I'll do some coaching, but I won't sell any books. My absolute goal is to sell books. And so I'm trying, therefore, then to negotiate with my clients or potential clients. Yes, you buy 100 books and I will do that. You buy 1,000 books and I will do that. It's not I will do that, but hey, you don't have to buy the books. And being prepared to walk away from the hey, I will do that bit if they're not prepared to buy the books. And that's going to be a challenge for me, to be thinking, oh, geez, there could be, we don't want the book, but we want you to do 2 workshops for us. No, buy the book and then I'll do the workshops. Yeah. And sticking to that's going to be challenging, because as an entrepreneur, we all need income, and income is always, up and down and all of those sorts of things. But I feel convicted of that, and we have numbers of people that we're getting in front of. And, luckily the book is starting to appeal to different, to corporates who want to take a different approach to purpose. There's a lot of purpose washing going on in the marketplace, and my approach, I think, is quite different to how companies might approach purpose, and it's very, very cost effective. I've written a very good sales page as to why a company would invest in 1,000 purpose project books instead of a consultant, which is a much more cost-effective, low-risk option to approach purpose than if you actually paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars for a consultant to come in and tell you what your purpose statement is. And sorry, I'm doing a bit of eye rolling, but I'm becoming increasingly alarmed at the way companies are approaching this thing of purpose. And purpose, it's such an important subject. Meaning, purpose, calling, vocation, whatever you want to call it, it's such an important subject. And it really, I'm really quite worried at how companies are using it. They're lipsticking the pig, to be honest. They're trying to use purpose as a way to attract and retain good people, and they're taking the wrong approach. And I can say that because I've had 20 years in corporate, as well as 15 being in my own business and exploring this stuff. And I feel I've been a practitioner of this stuff. I haven't been a consultant in it. I've actually been bringing it to life through my own projects, through every book that I've written, every other thing I've started, and really tested what works and what doesn't. And I'm really quite alarmed at the approach companies are having and the amount of money they're wasting on it. And it's a really vital subject, and I just love to kind of be the antagonist, the provocateur around this subject, and change the way organisations and individuals think about what it is and what it isn't. Yeah.
Okay, so when you reached that first 1,000, how did you feel?
Excited. I went dancing.
And then if you
went out and had lots of red wine, and just I celebrated it.
Well, that's it. You've got to celebrate these things. So when you reach the 100,000 impact, how are you going to feel?
I'm going to have a purpose party.
A purpose party?
Yeah, in Melbourne when I come back.
I thought you were going to say Las Vegas or somewhere like that.
Well, it might be. I mean, I have to come back to Australia because it's my sister's birthday, 50th birthday, and you know, it's important to celebrate these things with your family as well and the people that you love. I'm also really grateful. My son's been very much behind what I'm doing and a big advocate for my work. He's coming to Sydney with me for the weekend to kick off the tour.
Cool.
And he's come to my dinners and different things. He's always turned up to my work stuff, which I think is a really important thing. And my dear old dad, like, he's been sending the book around to some of his business contacts and things as well. And my mum, she took the book to her local library in Queensland. And
so you got a team around you, which is another important thing that you have when you 10x something. You've got to, you know, have a support. And, you know, when you said that, you know, you reached out to that podcast, like I'm on a podcast tomorrow, believe it or not, with Cannabis Health Radio, and they, I think they have about 25,000 people. So when you reach out to people that've got bigger databases, then there's a lot of leverage in that, and you can make a lot of impacts by just speaking on a podcast, or, you know, getting some coverage in a magazine or a paper or the radio or TV. So that's real leverage. So
yeah,
when you,
and 100,000 is not going to be that hard to get, really. I might have to times it by 10 while I'm away.
You might have to go for the mill. Well, look, you know, you're embarking on something that's huge, and you're going to do 10 cities. It's funny how 10 cities, the 10x rule. What are you fearful about? Anything?
Oh yeah, I had a couple of sleepless nights.
What are the things you're worried about when you're over there? Like, you've got the game plan in place, but you know what's going on in your mind? How are you thinking about how this is all going to unravel itself in the United States?
I guess I'm fearful of. I think the biggest thing has been, am I going to get everything done? Because I'm also packing up my house, as I told you, and, you know, living out of a cabin bag and a backpack for 10 weeks. I've never done that before.
Hey, I've been doing it for the last 6 months.
I'm really excited because one of the practices in the book is the practice of living simply. And so, and to me, simple living is a really important thing. And part of living simply is living minimally and lightening your impact on the world. So I'm really kind of dedicated and passionate to that thought and that practice. The beautiful thing is, as I practice this book, I'm practicing all the practices in it. So like, one is the practice of courage, and the one is of curiosity, and, you know, redefining success and self-care, and there's some practices in there. So I'm actually practicing the practices in my book as I'm doing this tour, which is really cool. But I'm most afraid of, I was afraid that I just wouldn't be ready, that I've got so much to do and I haven't got the time. But actually it's been amazing how, so, you know, as soon as Mum found out I was going, she's coming on the plane tonight for 3 days to help me pack up. You know, so as soon as you put in place plans, then situations and people and circumstances appear to help you do that. Just like my campaign manager came along the same day I'd set the plan. I posted the job description for the campaign manager on Sidekicker, and she pinged me with a message and said, I just saw you applied this, and I knew this girl. And I mean, that's the benefit of having networks and community. And she contacted me and said, oh, I really I'd love to work for you. And I said, okay, come on board, do a trial for a few days. And she, oh my gosh, like she's just incredibly, she's smart, she shares my values, she's just amazing. And that has been, you know, the real thing is having the support and the people and finding the right people around you. I think no woman is an island, And together you can go far. Alone you can go fast, but there's a proverb, I'm not sure where it's from, but you know, together you can go far. And so to go fast, go alone. To go far, go together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing. And I think the format of, so my biggest fear, you know, so that was my fear in preparation. And my biggest fear for going there is just getting lost all the time. And I'm shocking with directions. So the other thing is kind of that thing of feeling lost and not knowing where I'm going. So what I've done to counteract that, because I'm going to cities I've never been to before, I'm going to cities where I don't know anyone yet. But what I've done is tried to create for myself an anchor. So I'm going to Sydney and I'm from Sydney, and I've put in place events. I'm meeting people for coffee. It's my hometown kind of, so Billy's coming with me. So I'm creating anchor points. I'm also going to be making sure that I do my dance and I continue my health and well-being practices that are really important. So making sure and taking something from home that's meaningful to me, like a couple of little mementos and things that kind of, whenever I get to a new place, I can put them on my bedside table and they'll kind of anchor me to my home and to place. And also
the map?
The map, yeah, I'd love to take that. I'll have to photograph that.
Can I have that while you're away?
Sure, I think it's in hot demand. But and then the other thing is, so when I get to Toronto, I'm going to a 3-day conference with a whole lot of people that belong to the B Corp community. For those listening, certified B Corp benefit corporations. It's a whole global movement. I won't share what it is here, but there's a conference there. So I'm going to be grounded with my peeps, with people that have the same values and share the same philosophy on capitalism and business. And I'm staying with really good friends in Toronto that I met in France in 2010. So, and then when I go to New York, I've got my accommodation almost sorted, and I've got a conference that I'm going to. I'm going to the Wisdom 2.0 conference in New York, which is going to be really cool. So I'm trying to create anchor points and connections in every single one of those cities. And I'm spending a couple of weeks with my friend Julie in Boulder, Colorado, and we're doing some events and things together as well. So trying to create anchor points. And I think that's the important part for me, to not feel fearful, is that I have these anchor points, that I'm just not turning up in a city and not knowing anyone and spending 7 days just feeling kind of isolated and lonely.
Yeah. Okay. Just aware of the time. We'll close off by, what would you say to somebody that's on the immersion effect program that wants to apply the 10x rule and do something similar to you, like really scaling up? Did you ever think that what you're going to achieve is possible before you even set out to do this? Like, do you know that you could tap into your potential and unleash something like this? Because this was pretty bold.
I've been working a lot on my self-awareness and self-esteem and confidence the last 12 months, not just as a business person, but as a woman, which is a whole nother subject.
So do you think that this is a real big confidence boost for you? Because I think the immersion effect program is a huge boost to self-confidence and self-belief, all those things. That's what I think the program is going to be great at.
Yeah. Look, 12 months ago, I started writing this book 18 months ago, and my previous book, Conscious Marketing, I'd written that book, and I never put the same energy into that because I was also building Slow School at the same time. And for some reason, if I look back now, I think I've always had a crisis of confidence that I could actually make an income from my absolute purpose, which is to write books that truly matter. That's my highest purpose. Yeah. I'm here to write books. I've got another 10 in me. My next one's a feminist novel. I just know that that's what I'm here for.
Just go and see J.K. Rowling. She'll teach you.
Yeah, exactly. I have to write fiction to be a bestseller, maybe.
Yeah,
But
create something like Harry Potter.
no, not my thing. Wizardry. But I think I'd always believed that I couldn't make money from selling books, and that writing the book was the luxury. And what's going on in the back of my mind with this 100,000 Impacts Tour is that if I can prove that I can make money from this book, then I can make money from any book I write moving forward.
Wow.
And it's the confidence. And when I was in France in 2010, I wrote Unstuck in Provence. And I published it 3 years later. It took 3 years to publish, mainly for personal reasons and because it had a lot of personal stuff in it that I probably didn't want my young son to be reading or to have out in the marketplace, but he was pretty cool with it, or my ex-husband for that matter. And I wrote on this card in France that a purpose statement or intention statement, which was basically that my writing, that I'd be a prolific and proficient writer, that my writing would help heal myself and heal others, and that I would make an excellent income from writing and traveling the globe. And I wrote that in 2010. And I still don't even think, but I kept writing even though I haven't made a massive living from books. I still kept writing. So I've published 3 books in 7 years now. And I still kept doing the work even though I haven't made the living that I wanted from those books. But I finally feel I have a methodology, a process, a book that is scalable and saleable, and that I'm stepping into a space of confidence to actually bring that statement that I wrote in 2010 to life, that I can make an excellent income from my writing while I'm traveling the globe. So freaking out, like, okay. So there's 2 things going on here. The 2 things that are going on is that I've written a book that I really hope serves people to reach their fullest potential. I've written a book that is meaningful to me and consequential for others, that's going to be of service and make an impact. And while I'm fulfilling that, I'm also fulfilling this deep desire to make writing books a financially profitable, prosperous thing for me that I can do till I can't write anymore. Writing's the one thing, if you said to me you can never write again, I'd seriously go into very, very deep depression. It's that thing that I can't not do.
Wow, it's a big statement. So what is that about you and writing books? What's driving it? Why do you do what you do?
It's really simple. I'm in flow when I write. Time goes. I'm happy. Nothing better than a big bold glass of red wine while you're writing some kind of. And I love it when there's a sentence. So a sentence might, there's lots of sentences in my book that just I write and I go, oh, so, there's a sentence like, we end up doing work that depletes us instead of completes us.
Wow.
Just words like that, and coming up with concepts. So there's a saying that we teach what we most need to learn. Well, I think I write what I most need to learn. And I'll say something like the concept of purpose activists. That comes through writing, not through thinking. It's kind of, I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's like channeled. It comes from somewhere that I can't say I consciously think of it. It just comes. And I'll talk about purpose activism, or I'll come up with quotes and statements like on these cards that I've done, like, you know, we're entering the human age, the age where meaning is the new money. And doing work that matters most. So I'll say these quotes or lines, you know, some people might think they're twee, well, each to their own, and I kind of let go of what other people think of my work, because what you and others think of me is actually none of my business. So the more you step more into your purpose and committed of your work, the more you don't care what other people think. You know, a painter doesn't paint a piece of art with his audience in mind, which is what we're taught in the business world. Everything you must create, you must think of your audience. It sounds selfish, but it's not. It's actually work I want to create. It's a lesson I need to teach myself. I'm writing what I most need to learn and practice. And in doing so, then I'm offering a gift to somebody else who may read my book and take the gift from that. And it's like the 10x effect. There were gifts that I took from it. There was many parts that annoyed the hell out of me, but I took the gift that it was there to give me and did something with it. And that's like every piece of art or piece of music you take. There's always a piece of music you listen to, and there's a moment in it. It could be the silence, or it could be the note, or it could be the line. You know, Leonard Cohen, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. You know, I use that in my book. I think of it often, I journal on it, you know, and there's always a line, a note, a silence in a music piece that you'll love, and then there'll be a piece of that music that you're kind of not so connected to. And so part of, you know, and this is another word, like I come up with words, like I'm just reading this one, I've got all these quotes on cards, and I came up with this word called inspiration, which stands for inspired action. And the definition I've given it is an emotionally and or spiritually inspired idea that compels one to take action without delay, otherwise known as inspired action, inspiration. And then I talk about, you know, inspiration comes from spirit, and many people get inspired, but they don't take action. And that's like pointless. Don't even bother getting inspired if you're not going to take action. And then most of us in the world take action, and it's not coming from a place of spirit. We're actually just doing stuff. And action at its worst can be deadly. You know, action without true emotional, spiritual basis and rational, and those things have a role to play in it. But why I like writing is I come up with words like that.
Yeah. Well, it's quite evident in your passion for what you're doing, that's all coming across. So we'll wrap it up here now because it's coming up to 1 hour, but that was awesome.
Oh my God,
stuff.
have we had an hour?
We've had an hour. I thought this was going to be 30 minutes.
Sorry, maybe cut it into 2 Fs.
That's all right, you did good. So this is just for, you know, people that, you know, have an interest in the Immersion Effect program, and for them to get connected to you, for them to hear and see what you've done applying the 10X to, you know, whatever you're doing, which is all that stuff you just mentioned. And the thing about it is the people get to use your book on this program, and that's the second thing that I want them to really get clear on and get that all embedded, so that when they start taking the action, once they know what their purpose and mission is to apply the action that's going to get them the desired results. So I just want to say thank you for sharing 1 hour with us.
You're welcome. Okay.
All
Bye.
right. See you later. Bye.